Hello everyone, I'm going to talk a little bit about paper and how to fold papers. For some of your briefs you will work with paper and you want to maybe know how to play with it. You can use newspapers of course, or you can use simple sheets of paper, you know, like printing paper, you can use for the printer or something. I'm going to use some cartridge paper, which is some drawing paper. It's the same stuff that you have in your sketchbook really. To demonstrate something larger first, and then I'm going to use some very plain normal copy paper to do another presentation. Right, so first of all, I want to show you some techniques that are maybe of interest for you to play around when you want to drape with fabric, with paper instead of fabric, for example, you know. I'm just making the sheet a little bit smaller, because I didn't have smaller paper. So I'm using a ruler here, but if you don't have a ruler, don't worry. A corner of a table is also great. See, if I wanted to fold something, unfortunately this table has round corners, so it will not help me really. But all you would do is really go around the corner and fold it. Now this one has a round edge, so it doesn't work, unfortunately. I can simulate the edge by doing this, you know. See, nice clean fold that you would be able to achieve on the table. And if you want it in the right angle to the paper, a nice fold, you just align the paper to the side of the table, yeah, and you check that it's aligned, and then you do your fold, yeah. Now, the first technique is very straightforward. It's to fold a fan, right? This is very handy for many things. Imagine you want to make some jewelry like collars or something interesting, or some objects, you know. So without my corner of a table, I will just use the ruler as such. So I had the first fold like this, and to do a precise fan, you could literally just use your fingers and align it, and align this. So you're literally aligning both sides. You can also turn it over if that's easier, and align that, turn it over, align that. So maybe it's easier to see from the side what I'm aligning. See? I'm aligning the edge of this here with this. Hold it tight, turn it over, pull it over and align this with that. This is a very straightforward way of making a nice fan. Yeah. So, now what can I do with this fan? I can do loads of things with it. Especially, there we go, if I've got strong scissors. Make sure you've got some paper scissors. Strong ones from the kitchen are quite good. Now, I'm sure you all know that if you cut into a fan, and you cut a little pattern into it, that something got caught in here in the screw. And you cut from different sizes without cutting through the whole thing, you can do some pretty fun paper patterns. Let's do another one. And the last one. So if I open this up now, you would have a nice sort of lacy effect, yeah? Which is quite fun if you imagine you're creating a piece of jewelry or a detail on a dress, let's say, or something, or simply just a fan, yeah? You can of course work into it and also maybe change the top of it so it's not quite as boring. Now see, now it's kind of round, right? So what I want to do next is show you how you can actually create almost stretchy paper. And the way to do that is by cutting into papers and never cut all the way through, just cut sort of 2/3 through, yeah, to here. Leave a bit of space and you do that again. And you do that again. And again. First you do one side, that's really important. And I would say just explore, play with it, with the spacing and see kind of what works for you. I'm struggling a little bit because it's so many layers and it's quite thick. You turn it over and you cut in the other direction and you cut in between your cuts so that you're, and again, only like 2/3, yeah? Never all the way through, obviously, otherwise you chop your wonderful artwork in half. Yeah, and so almost done. 4 more cuts. 3, 2, and 1. That's it. And if I open this, if I open this now, need to do this careful so it doesn't rip. I've got overlapping cuts on this. I don't know if you can see that. It looks a bit like a basket structure or something, right? So the amazing thing from this technique is that it will allow you to stretch the paper. It's a technique that was originally developed by furriers, so people who work with fur, because animal hides are very precious. So imagine you work with fur and you want to make it longer and bigger, but because it's so limited in surface, they developed this technique of slicing it from the back, like this. And you see these cuts are overlapping. So what it does is, when you pull, it creates a honeycomb effect. And you want to do it very carefully, and all of a sudden it opens up. And this, if you do this on a larger scale, you make sure you don't cut through, otherwise you have problems somewhere, you know? You can create some really wonderful things with paper, you know? Some objects like this one, you know, it could become a detail on a garment, you know, on a sleeve, or imagine you're making a big skirt or something. It works better with thinner paper and with large sheets. You can try it with newspaper as well. It's really good because those newspapers are already quite big, and you've got this amazing texture, which I think in itself is quite interesting. Yeah? So then there's other ways of folding things. Let's say you want to make a skirt out of paper, right? And obviously, if you would say, okay, I want to use that as a skirt, great, that's already quite interesting, you know. But if you plan to do something that has folds, you can't make a fan, because the fan effectively always sits on the same point. You end up with lots of fans on one next to the other or something. But an interesting way of doing this is either to do your overlapping. So this was your fan technique again, 1 by 1, remember? Yeah, just repeating this. And you see you're adding always to the same point. You will not be able to turn this, let's say, into a pleat for a skirt. So what you need to do is you need to shift a little bit. Every time you have a fold, you shift a little bit. So, and again, with the corner of a table, that's really easy. Yeah? See, it's like this now. And like this. And again, always make sure that you only shift a little bit. And it's actually really straightforward to do this. And you end up with something like that. Yeah. And eventually, if you make this big enough, you know, you can, for example, pleat fabric as well like this. You end up with a really nice way of creating a continuous pleat that you can use to create something like a garment. There we go. See, that, for example, would now work almost as a kilt, you know, in the style, and would open up, and it kind of works across. Yeah, it also looks really interesting when you do that with newspapers, because then you have bits of text and images coming out, and it's quite intriguing. Yeah, so